Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Battle Hardened San Diego. My name is Bryce Platts. I'm here with Michael Murray, Swinger of Hammers, for another high-octane Flesh and Blood match. We've got a special one here for all of you from the local scene. We've got friend of the show, Blake Meier, and also friend of the show, Anthony Pham, heading off in an Uzuri Riptide matchup.
I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be grindy. We're going to be playing it out to the last point of life.
As am I.
Yeah.
It's going to be really, really fun. And not only for the match, but for the people that are going to be in front of the camera. Both of them are extremely entertaining people to play Flesh and Blood with.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, let's touch really quickly on our metagame. Top decks here at Battle Hardened San Diego are Zen, Nu, and Kano. Kano has been performing incredibly well, as we saw in your last match, right,
Kano
Michael?
has been, we talked about how he had the top 5 tables. I'm sure some of them have fallen since then. I'm not sure which ones or how many, but obviously the Kano is coming in very hot this weekend.
Indeed, and finding great success. And we've
so far, we have quite a few games to go, so
Indeed.
Kano's going to need to keep it up if he wants to keep those top tables.
Actually, I should mention one of the ones that fell to Blake just last round.
Yeah,
it was an
taking out the
Uzuri versus
Kano.
Kano matchup. Against all odds,
Yeah.
making it through the pitch stack and getting there in the
He
end.
managed to beat a pitch stack and Kano.
All right, without further ado, let's get right into it. We've got Anthony Pham on the right, playing our Green Man Riptide, and Blake Meier on the left with Uzuri Switchblade.
It's a real fight in the sewers. This time, rather than being flame on flame, we've got this rainy, dark poison versus poison. Loving the thematics of the matchups today.
This is where I'm more comfortable. I'm definitely more comfortable in the theme of the Outsiders set than I am in Part the Misfile. It's too clean up there.
Rangers. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
We need a little bit of grit to our fights, and we are going to have a gritty matchup. The grind will be real. 2 decks that want to play for value and disruption.
Indeed we shall, Michael. And grit is where the world of Flesh and Blood lives, in my eyes, personally. I love the tubby green, toxic breathing sewer man any day of the week over super clean.
Wouldn't
Zen
call him
Enigma.
pretty, but certainly a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah, indeed. So here we go. Players have drawn up. They've gotten the go-ahead. Let's take a look at the equipment suite, shall we, Michael? What do you see?
All right. Well, on the left, we see the Crown of Providence, the Flick Knives, the Findle Spring Tunic, and I believe that is the. Sorry, what is the name of these boots?
Black Tech Whisperers.
Black Tech Whisperers.
Oh.
Right.
That's the sound they make when.
I got that. The whispering. And then Anthony, bringing in the Balance of Justice, along with the Trench. You can't play Riptide without the Trench. And it looks like the new arm piece from the Azalea deck.
No, that would be the older one. That's the half
Excuse
glove.
me. Half
That's
glove.
the
Thank
get
you.
around
my
Warmonger's
Ranger
diplomacy
main here.
card. Yeah.
Very smart in this matchup.
So here comes Blake Meier, starting it off with an overpitch for a Nerve Scalpel. Nerve Scalpel, a critical card in this matchup because it is going to prevent or make Anthony's traps block for a little bit less. Anthony says, no, I'm not interested in that at all. Here comes a Tar Pit Trap on top of your Nerve Scalpel, which does indeed have Go Again. It is now going to make it so no matter what Blake sends after this, no on-hits.
Yeah, no on-hits is really crucial, especially when that card is a weakest link, one of the best on-hits in the game. Don't expect that to trigger very often, so this is a good time to send it. Blake just clearing it from his hand.
Not against Riptide, at least.
Right.
But the question is still asked. Anthony, do you want to take 6? Most of the time for this list, Anthony is going to say no. This is a list that Anthony has been working on for a very long time. He is a famous Riptide sympathizer. And he has been wanting to put together results on Riptide since his inception. Anthony thinks that he's got it now with the pieces from the Azalea Armory deck, and also, I believe, a little bit of tech that he's been brewing himself. He brought this deck to U.S. Nationals, sporting what he thinks is the newest Wounded Bull, barraging, wait a minute, Braunhide, barraging Braunhide. There's so many barraging cards in this game.
We've got the barraging Blake, the barraging Braunhide.
Indeed we have. So
It's like Blake is just going to block all the way out and draw back up, giving Anthony the full tempo, 38 to 38.
which is something that's really not too scary to do. Oh, it's
Oh,
Blake's
I'm
turn,
sorry.
actually.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Let me
If
set
Blake
up.
were to do that, it's not so scary with Riptide most of the time. Usually he's just going to be able to send 1 arrow, or if he's got a clunky trap hand, Arsenal Pass.
Yeah. I do expect the Uzuri to have the tempo most of the time here, but they both play on a very similar axis.
What's up, 2 reactions?
No.
Inertia trap triggers. You'll take 1. And
The inertia trap is triggering here. Why does this nerve scalpel have more power than its base?
Using the go again. Roll.
I'm honestly not sure why.
Did he give an? Oh, he did give an inertia.
no free.
No.
Yeah, that seems odd to me.
Piercing.
Isolate.
Piercing.
chat.
Yes, right you are.
What an interesting way to play that.
Anthony's a king.
Power time.
Thank you, chat, for keeping an eye on me. I take 1 break and I'm already soft as I come
Such
back
an
into the
intricate game.
booth. And here comes take cover. Cover up 4 damage. Take cover is kind of a funny card in Riptide because it's redundant. You play it
Right.
from hand, you reload.
Yeah.
I guess it's got text if you play it from Arsenal.
Sure.
Unfortunately, Anthony is already throwing one of his most useful traps into the bin. That's Buzzsaw Trap. And that's going to be huge against these assassins or any deck that tries to push power. Inertia token doing work on Blake.
Anthony Pham just blocking out firmly, putting up his wall on the back foot, so to speak, but not really wanting the tempo, I would imagine, being... he would rather be playing these defense reactions and pinging the damage.
Anthony is very happy to go long on this game. We have another trap triggering. That's a frailty trap. This one's a big one because it's going to say, your daggers come in for 0. Blake takes a moment to take stock of his life before proceeding.
Now, one of the things about this matchup that I don't know well enough to really comment on, but Riptide doesn't have a weapon. And if your goal is to fatigue, it's really helpful to have a weapon. That bow is going to lose a lot of its potential when you have no more arrows left to fire. So Anthony Pham blocking out a lot is... He'll still need to do something on the other end of that in order to close the game out.
And that's exactly the reason for that barraging Braunhide tech that Anthony has brought in. He basically just wants to make as many overly efficient plays as possible. So anytime he can come in for 7 or even an extra value of 8 on the barraging Braunhide, Anthony is feeling just fine. And so he has a little bit of inevitability on his side. Number 1, he's got a Remembrance basically just sitting on the board for him in the Quiver of Abyssal Depths. He's also packing Remembrance, if I'm not mistaken. And then you've also got 3 copies of Codex of Frailty.
Right.
And, hey, why not also an Endless Arrow to boot?
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm really interested to see how the fatigue plays out. The only reason I bring that up is because I know that Uzuri is also a master of fatiguing. So when you've got these 2 decks that can both play on the fatigue axis, it makes it really up to the players to be piloting these from the very beginning in a very not only damage efficient but card efficient kind of way. You don't want to be giving more cards to your opponent than they're spending on their attacks. And the daggers do demand cards.
Indeed they do.
Without, you're pitching for them.
But in Riptide's favor, those knives often trigger traps, right?
It's true. Yeah.
And traps are an inevitable game closer in their own right. There's no blocking that damage, right?
Yeah.
Here comes an intoxicating shot from Anthony. This is that kind of controversial Riptide card, at least when it was first printed. This is a card that benefits your opponent on hit.
Here, have some tokens.
Exactly. But those tokens come with a price. You turn on every single one of Riptide's traps, except for the reaction ones, by popping those tokens.
And 5 damage coming across, a little bit inefficient to block.
And there's Anthony showing a smirk. Let
What
it
do you
hit,
wanna
man.
do? Yeah.
Let it hit. You
Come on.
have everything to gain, right?
It's just 5 damage.
We gotta play the right way.
You're going to block.
True you are, Blake. True you are.
Blake showing his philosophy. Play the game the right way. Get there in the end, I'm sure.
Yeah. And we've touched on this before, but it really is so important for these players to be thinking long term right now and playing their game plan out from the get-go, thinking about all the possible ways that they can win and lose.
We got the traditional mid-game fist bump as both players show their respect to one another. This is likely going to be an E-strike for 7. And Blake showcasing why that block was perhaps a little bit relevant. Sure, he could have gone E-strike, draw a card. Sure, he could have gone E-strike, buff power. go again, but that would have turned on Anthony's Frailty Trap.
Mhm.
Blake is saving 1 health by doing this. Oh, I'm sorry. It was not for 7. It
Oh,
was
yeah,
go
he
again.
did the go again.
And here comes
Codex
of
makes
Frailty.
sense.
Yes, indeed. Blake saying, I am going to play this not the way Anthony wants me to play it. I'm going to play it the most hyper-efficient way I possibly can.
Yeah. Using those codexes is one of the most efficient plays you can do.
Unfortunately, Anthony's got a Pitfall Trap.
Yeah.
And that is a incredible card in Riptide. We're talking 6 value sometimes for 1 card.
Yeah, so the Leave No Witnesses targeting the arsenal, he just plays a D-React from the arsenal, no longer caring if that gets discarded, and also deals quite a bit of damage. It looks like he took 3 from that with the trigger and the additional 2 without any floating resources to pay.
That 0 card 6, that is the card that actually made me want to play Riptide when he first came out.
It's a very cool card.
Yeah. And then here comes Titan's Fist in bow form.
Yep.
0 for 4 Endless Arrow, that's going to go right back into my arsenal.
Blake choosing to use his Black Tech Whispers to block this, making sure that he doesn't, in fact, to get to put that in his arsenal.
Go ahead.
Good use of the equipment,
-1 counters.
as that is one of the most efficient cards. The Endless Arrows, endless being the important part.
Operative word.
Yeah, the operative word, thank you.
There is one more bit of inevitability that we haven't touched on yet, and that is Anthony's bow. Even though it is not a weapon with attack power on its own, Dreadbore has a way of allowing Rangers to grind these games out, because basically all of these arrows that come in for breakpoints can't be blocked hyper efficiently by the 0 for 4 defense reactions in most cases. If Blake is unlucky enough to have them in his deck and in his hand at a time where he really needs to block well, it's like, well, this is still going to be a 2-card block. And then I have to find a way to make this defense reaction work on my turn.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that it does clunk up all those defense reactions, creating even further inefficiencies on the defensive end. As we see Anthony Pham playing out a Sigil of Solace, gaining 3 life, right back to where we started at 38 life.
And Anthony, very astutely, not going for the full cover-up block of the Bonds of Agony. He just says, I'm going to just get rid of all the cards in my hand.
Yeah.
Instead, I'm just going to play a Sigil from hand. I'm going to reload this last card, and then, you know, nuts to your play, Blake. I don't have any cards for you to banish.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to lay the triggers.
Let's do Justin Nick banishes a card off the top of your deck. Sure. That's the only one I got, right?
Yeah. And then I have no hand.
And I go again. To play Hurl for 3.
Strike.
Blake cashing in his Black Tech Whisperers fairly early to play a Hurl from hand. I wonder if there was a thought of sequencing it with the Hurl first. Maybe Blake was trying to hold on to as many cards as possible to bluff an extra buff. Like,
And there's the Codex. Both of them get to play this card.
and it's one of those things, like Rangers and Assassins kind of go back and forth. It's like one of those classes that's fluid for the specialist because of that critical card, Codex of Frailty. If you know how to play with it in one class, you know how to play with it in another.
Blake grabbing a Command and Conquer, one of the best possible targets from the
Wait, no.
Codex, whether you're the one playing it or the one being played against.
And if there's a form of inevitability on the side of whoever's facing Riptide, it's Command and Conquer. Because if you can send that 3, in Assassin's case, 6 times in a game, you're going to do the opposite effect of Dreadbore to your opponent.
Right. It's really difficult for a deck that has so many defense reactions to be blocking out these Command and Conquer.
So let's take a look at the context of Anthony's hand. How many traps are we holding? I believe I saw a Boulder Trap. I believe I saw a Pitfall Trap, a Frailty Trap,
Oh, wow.
a Pendulum Trap.
Okay, he is in a pickle here, facing down Command and Conquer. No defense reactions can be played on this chain link. And it looks like that's all he has in hand, so he just takes it.
It's not all bad for Anthony.
Trench,
He can
putting the
trench
card
that card
back in
away.
his deck. Very important to note that that is really important when you're playing to fatigue.
Mhm.
Even though he doesn't get to keep the card, he does get to keep it in his deck.
And deck damage is a very real thing when we're talking about fatigue. So here comes Release the Tension. Oh, this is a great combo. Release the Tension, reload, Battering Bolt, send Battering Bolt.
Yeah.
Battering Bolt says, if this connects, I will take all of the reaction cards out of your hand, and you will take 1 life for every single one that I find. If they're defense reactions, they can't be played from Arsenal because of Release the Tension. They can't be played from hand because of Dreadbore. This is one of these combos that maybe is not like the linchpin in Assassin. However, if he was facing off with a Guardian or something like that, like you're sniping on movables, sink belows, right and left. Like this
And-
is how Riptide gets there.
Yeah, and Blake just decides to go ahead and respect that, giving up all of his attack reactions and the E-strike to block it out.
And finding his last Codex of Frailty, if I'm not mistaken.
I think this might be his second. Anthony played the one from
Right.
earlier.
And that's how he got the Command and Conquer.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Blake only has his Tunic counter, so he's not going to be able to find a Command and Conquer on this chain. It will be Leave No Witnesses one more time, which Anthony can cover up very easily with a trap. And there it is, Frailty Trap. Won't trigger on this, but still no Leave No Witnesses on hit. Let's
It
see what
looks like-
Anthony's got.
Yeah, Anthony's taken some tempo in exchange for life here, down to 24, but keeping cards, sending more offense now.
And Anthony's saying, here comes Weakest Link. This card is not in my deck right now because it has a particularly amazing on-hit against you. It's in my deck so that I can't get fatigued as fast. I can just send more damage, more efficient damage.
It almost feels like a miniature Guardian attack. You're just playing a nice big 2-card play, but one of them goes back into your deck. 6 damage, block 3. Really effective at just pulling cards over the course of a game.
And
if you
these
wanna
are the
stop.
moments that if you are running those defense reactions, on Blake's side of things, you kind of want to play them out against all of your opponent's non-arrow attacks because obviously Weakest Link is not affected by the static text on Dreadbore. So here comes Vanilla 6 by all intents and purposes. Let's listen into what Blake's saying. I can hear his laugh through my headphones from over here.
No. Oh my
What? There's
god.
cards in your deck that don't block.
Yeah,
What you
what
got
the
in there?
heck, man?
Even looking for scrap blocks. When I get handed-
Anthony has been playing this deck all day and going to time pretty much every round, and the fatigue is starting to show. Might have to get him a coffee in between rounds, or maybe an adrenaline shot.
Yeah, he's got his water, staying hydrated. Very, very important when you've got a long day of flesh and blood to stay hydrated.
Riku in chat making a really good point. Weakest Link
Whoa.
is still relevant for Uzuri because
That's not how that works.
there's no you get to look at their hand.
Almost
There's
right.
no
All that.
guessing game as to what they're going to swap in.
I'll block 4 of this.
Slightly
Unfortunately-
inefficient block there from Blake.
And then reveal your hand.
And that's exactly what Anthony wants to see. He wants to exploit all of the inefficiencies on his opponent's side of the board. And that's how he is going to make it despite having a super long game and a weapon that doesn't swing for any power. But Blake says, I can be efficient too. Here comes a 2-card 7.
Yeah. Interested to see that. I wonder what the thought process was behind blocking with those 2 blocks when he had a potential go again in the form of looking for a scrap.
Perhaps it was this play here. Spreading Plague, coming in hot for 2 Blood Rots. That is nothing to shake your hat at.
Yeah.
Oh, one of these cards was from Arsenal, unfortunately.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
only going to be 1 Blood Rot, right?
Y-
No, it's just number of cards.
Yeah, it looks like they are. He still has 2. They all agreed that
Yeah,
2 was
okay.
the number.
Cool.
Really cool card. I got by that last week. The Spreading Plague.
Anthony says, here comes another 6. With a little bit of information. I know, I believe that Blake is on the list that won Pro Tour Amsterdam, and I think there are 3 Spreading Plagues in that list. Maybe because of these long-term Riptide decks? I'm honestly not sure when you would side those in unless you're expecting like a super long game and a lot of blocking.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic way to just push damage.
Persuasive Prognosis is the response to Anthony's redraw. Anthony says no blocks, immediately just the Nick comes down, which is only 6. Oh, Pendulum Trap is the key card against the Assassins. Pendulum Trap on trigger is if your opponent has played a reaction. And Pendulum Trap is going to mill 2 cards out of Uzuri's deck, which, if we're talking about inevitability and deck damage being like critical points of this matchup, Anthony just gained some equity.
No, the milling of cards is really, really important. And one of the things I like about Assassin when it comes to dealing deck damage is the fact that these cards often banish. The contract cards are looking at the top of the deck, getting rid of them. But they can both play on that axis. Anthony, Pham, Riptide doing it on the back of this defense reaction, and Blake doing it on the back of contract.
And here comes a Battering Bolt for 7. Dreadbore showing its value once again by pushing that 6 power arrow to a breakpoint of 7. Blake has to give 2 cards and still take 1. We're going to look at the hand once again. Anthony just able to make it so he doesn't have to make any sort of hard decisions. He knows exactly what's in Blake's hand every single turn.
Yeah, Blake keeping a CNC and an infect. Just sending the infect easy. Oh, 2-card block.
Because, of course, there's the CNC on the back, which could be flipped in with Uzuri.
Right.
The back of the stealth card.
That's actually very true.
So Anthony sniffing that one out because he saw it.
Yep.
So
But
not
still,
so much.
I
as
mean, it's a
sniffing,
1 for 2, and Blake gets to keep an arsenal of the CNC. So this is what makes Uzuri so effective, that you sort of have like, well, I've got a plan whether you block or you don't.
Yeah. Right, you are. And Anthony Pham does have the opportunity to then basically bait it out if it's a good time to take that CNC and just trench away the card. That being said, we are at half of Anthony's life. I guess a little bit more than half because Riptide starts at 38. But he's taking damage. There's no question about it. And the decks are still very thick.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a long way to go here, about halfway through the life totals and maybe a little less than halfway through the decks. Playing efficiently is the name of the game. Getting those 1 for 2s.
Blake still has access to Crown of Providence, which at any point he can throw in front of one of Anthony's CNCs and see if he can get a super wide turn. That being said, that is not something that assassins are usually known for. So Blake just says, here's 2 cards.
Yeah. Just playing that really efficient 2-card, 3-card hand.
Let's see what he's got on the return. Is that a weakest link in Blake's hand?
It is, but he decides to
send the
save it
CNC
for later.
because that is the best card against Riptide. Unfortunately, Anthony finds his way into 2 arrows, which will block out that CNC. He survives 1 more without a handful of traps. Anthony's going to go ahead and activate the Dreadbore with his arsenal still full. Likely that is telegraphing a Codex, and he just wants to save that take cover for later. So here comes Anthony's, I believe, 2nd Codex of the game. He's only going to have 1 resource floating. Anthony would really like to be able to send 2 power attacks with that Codex just for more damage, especially if we're expecting a long game like we've been talking about so much. Tokens are valuable here, and here comes Remorseless. Remorseless is not going to have that first line of text active because it didn't enter Anthony's arsenal face up, but it will tax Blake for life every time he plays an action card if it hits.
Yeah, so Blake would be making a mistake probably to go super wide and take this hit during this turn. Doesn't seem like the way he's been playing so far, so we're probably just going to see a 2-card block and just keep playing this efficient, giving up cards, trading 3 cards, 2 cards each turn.
As a swinger of hammers, as a Guardian player, does this feel like peak quintessential Flesh and Blood to you?
Absolutely. I mean, quintessential is, you know, there's 3 decks I like. I like Victor, I like Kano, and I like Dash.io. And they all play on very different axes. It's kind of like a little bit of flavor of each way to play Flesh and Blood. But in this case, it does feel a little bit like a Guardian Mirror.
In certain respects, it does, doesn't it?
The disruption, the efficient blocking. But certainly these 2 heroes have far more tricks. A Guardian plays a lot more face-up than either of these 2 decks. So there's a depth to what we're seeing here that I think is just very, very interesting.
So here comes Isolate from Blake. This is coming in for 1. It's got Dominate. The trickiest thing about this card is that it's got Dominate. So ostensibly, your opponent blocks with 1 card from hand. Uzuri flips in a card that is more powerful than that, and then your opponent is forced to take it. Tricky bit is, again, Riptide. He's got access to so many defense reactions in the form of these traps. So Isolate is not nearly as scary of a card as it is to other classes.
Right, you are.
Tripwire trap will trigger. So pay 1.
Trap number 1. This is Tripwire Trap. It's coming from the arsenal. This is one of our Crucible traps, so it must come from the arsenal. No matter what, that's a condition for playing it. Tripwire Trap says, when you play this, your opponent has the opportunity to pay 1 resource. If they do, then they basically keep their on-hits. If they don't, there's no on-hits for this chain link.
Oh, shit, I already...
So Blake went ahead and activated Uzuri, which is also going to turn on... I'm sorry, that's a boulder trap. I thought that was a pendulum trap. There is no activation on the boulder trap because the power of the attack in question was not greater than its base.
We just come in with an Enlightened Strike now from Anthony Pham. That efficient 2-card 7.
Did Blake activated Uzuri?
He did. He ended up
leave the
playing a
card in
Death
vanish?
Touch. Yeah.
Oh, he did. He played
Yeah,
a Death
he
Touch.
almost
see.
got away with not. Anthony tapped the hero ability.
I see.
Told him, hey, you gotta you played this. You gotta
Yeah,
put a
yeah,
card
yeah.
in.
Okay, cool.
He did. They cleaned it up quickly and moved on.
This is a very heady matchup, and,
Yeah.
and little mistakes like that happen all the time. Blake saying 1-card block to Anthony's E-Strike, and that is exactly the axis that Anthony is playing on. I want to send efficient 2-card attacks, and I want to sneak in damage that way.
Blake now playing a blue Isolate, 1 damage dominate.
He has the Shred on the front end,
CNC.
though. He's got a Shred and he's got a CNC.
So this is
that is a sticky wicket.
a good combination of cards to have paired with an Isolate.
If Anthony sniffs it out, however, he can donate defense reactions on the Isolate before it is revealed
And he
that
says
CNC
no
is in fact the
blocks.
card.
So here comes the reactions.
And Anthony potentially sniffing it out.
He would need a defense react in Arsenal right now in order to circumvent this.
Blake is also, yes, okay, cool. He is playing the Shred first before switching into the Command and Conquer, which is a very important thing for those of you learning Assassin at home. Shred can only hit a card that is defending an Assassin attack. If he were to, say, flip the CNC and then play the Shred, that would be an illegal play. So Blake's showcasing that he has had at least more than 1 rep on this deck.
And this is exactly the 3-card combo that Uzuri really wants to piece together. The Shred with the Isolate, with the Command and Conquer, getting the full damage, forcing the Trench away.
So it's just going to be 3 damage to Anthony Pham here. And Anthony is probably...
6, rather. He did shred the defense react.
I'm so sorry. You are absolutely right, Michael. So it is going to be 6 damage, which is unfortunate. But Anthony is not going to lose an Arsenal, which is okay.
Right, going back into his deck. That Trench is putting in work against the Command and Conquers, just adding those cards back to his deck, and now we see him doing that once again with his quiver, just trying to have as many cards, as many resources as possible. That comment I made earlier about the weapon, Anthony kind of showing us how it's possible to fatigue without one, because he has the ability to just keep putting these cards back in his deck. It's so interesting because Uzuri does the same thing. Those stealth cards go to the bottom. So they're both recycling the cards back into their deck. They're playing this very, looping all their power back into the deck. So grindy is the name of the game. Being efficient is the name of the game, and recurring cards, so important.
There's another point to make about this activation of the quiver. This makes it so that Anthony doesn't really have to remember his second cycle. This means that he kind of just gets to obviously reshuffle everything, but he doesn't have to play on this other axis of remembering pitch stack all the way through, which is good, because a lot of these times where you're getting hit by CNCs with Riptide, you're forced to trench things away that you might not otherwise want to pitch stack.
We see Blake playing a Bonds of Agony with 4 cards in hand. This is one of those plays, a little bit scarier when New does it, but you never know what's coming when the Bonds comes down. Is this just kind of a stealth into Uzuri? Or is this 3 reactions into losing the most important card in the matchup?
And you really don't know. And one of the other things that's so amazing about this Uzuri deck is Blake has the opportunity to activate Uzuri and just choose a card that he doesn't even want to swap in. So that's one way that you can kind of get those 3 attack reactions to pump the Bonds and give it the on-hit effect.
Very interesting line you just mentioned there.
So Blake has currently activated 2. We've got the Shred, we've got the Uzuri activation. Blake is showing us that he is indeed going to swap in the card. It's a Shakedown, Uzuri's namesake. We have so far just a Tar Pit trap devoted to the defense. We found another one, another trap that is, in the form of an Inertia trap, neither of which are going to activate, which means no free damage for Anthony and just an Arsenal pass for Mr. Blake.
Yep, spending 2 cards on Blake's for 3 cards on Anthony's, so a slight win, but no on hit. Anthony's probably very happy for the shakedown to shakedown like that.
Let's see how it shakes up for Anthony as he sends an intoxicating shot. Asking the question again, you want some free buffs?
It's so tempting.
Yeah, Blake seems to be really rattled by this card. He
He
keeps feeling like he's being given a gift, but also but also kind of a curse.
4.
Anthony perhaps getting in his head by sending this card over and over again.
Sigils are
But hey, I mean, it's a blue that is a 0 for 4 ultimately, and when you're going to second, third cycle, that can be a real advantage.
I run 4, so.
I will say no blocks at this time.
Give me 1 second.
He wants it.
Take 4.
He fell for the trap.
There you go. Good luck.
Let's see if Anthony can now draw the trap.
A classic
And he
blunder.
says, yeah, good luck.
Uh-huh.
Anthony has not yet seen that really pesky expansion slot card, Murky Water.
Swing for 7.
And I feel like that's going to be a pretty critical card
Good.
in this match. I feel like he would have fetched it off a Codex already if he had the opportunity. Just so powerful in recycling those traps.
Yep. 7 go again, weakest link. Of course, all the traps other than the reactions are turned on from this, but it's so tempting to just rip that efficient 7 damage. It's got a break point.
Wait a minute, Michael. Weakest link for 7 go. Is this a KO game?
I know. We see Anthony laying down his own weakest link. 3 block
Take
and
that.
taking the 4.
And Anthony
13.
Not
asks,
utilizing any traps
Yeah.
here.
Anthony asks reactions with a bit of a grin on his face, but alas, no traps to be found. Except for the one in hand, but unfortunately it's a pitfall trap. Cannot be played from hand. Must be played from arsenal.
So his arsenal is currently
Alright,
in use.
here we go. Going face forward into this one. Pitch a blue.
Blake feeling pretty good that he's got more information.
Take 1.
Goes with the nerve scalpel. That's interesting, considering at this point he knows that the only blocks Anthony can do. Okay, well, we're just going to follow it up with the other knife after
Using
that.
all of those resources. And this is the power of the daggers. As the life gets lower, that 1 damage becomes more and more threatening.
And since we were talking about inevitability, is there any better inevitability than flick knives?
Right. Can't stop that one.
Mm-mm.
Unless you're Enigma or someone else with Ward. Prism? Sure.
Okay, we're finally seeing some equipment blocks from Anthony. He goes ahead and blocks 7. Now, Anthony is probably not going to get value on this Balance of Justice besides that 2 block. I believe it's just his main board helmet.
Yeah, a
Nice
lot of
list.
players have decided that the Balance of Justice is just too good, and you also don't have the slots for both that and the Crown of Providence. So you go for the one that you think it helps spike those more difficult matchups in the form of Zen and maybe KO.
It is interesting because there have been a number of instances where, say, Anthony is facing a Command and Conquer. I wonder if there's ever been a thought process of, like, I would really like to have a Crown of Providence here. The tricky bit about Riptide is, like, you talk about Runeblade hands, you talk about Rock, Paper, Scissors, Assassin hands. There are some really useless cards you can draw in Riptide in certain situations. So maybe he's just saying, I would rather devote the slot to something else.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think
Cards in your deck.
here we're seeing, I'm not sure, I can't tell which deck is thicker, but I peeked, Blake sort of set his deck down sideways for a moment there, and it looked kind of thin.
Yeah,
It
looking
looked kind of thin.
in the player cam of Blake,
Yeah.
it definitely looks a little bit thinner than Anthony's.
Can we see Anthony's?
Oh yeah.
So I'm not
It
down.
does look thick,
And I believe that's because Anthony is definitely running more than 60
so
cards.
he piled. And that is a really, really important thing to do. If your plan is to fatigue, you'd better bring a bunch of cards. I wonder if Blake had the same thought. It may be that he brought a clean 60.
It may be. And we talked about pitch stacking before. Unless Blake was really careful and keeping an eye on his pitch stack, there's a possibility he's basically just got a pile of stealth cards on the bottom of his deck. And those clumped together are not nearly as good as they are first cycle.
Yeah, no, those don't have synergy with each other. You swap an isolate for another isolate.
So Blake might be feeling like, I don't know, I feel like I need to get this done and get it done quick because my damage is going to dry up.
Yeah, but with Anthony at 14 life, he has his work cut out for him
DQ.
to play on that axis.
Mhm. And here comes a Remorseless, once again chosen from the graveyard
I'm down.
off the back of Anthony's Codex of Frailty.
Where's the Gatorade pour?
I'll take 5.
Anthony says, where's the Gatorade pour?
Go to 50.
Yeah,
Oh, Blake just goes ahead and takes it, keeps a full grip, ostensibly to play multiple cards and give Anthony extra value on the Remorseless.
yeah.
Getting word from our producer, Justin, Blake has about a third of Anthony's deck.
Yep. So this is for absolutely favoring Anthony in the long game at this point. Probably no way for Blake to even think about fatigue. And so he's going to have to really push the damage here. And that's why we saw him take the damage. The Remorseless coming in at such a good time. for
Oh my
Anthony.
goodness, and Anthony hitting the absolute nuts when he needed it. Here is Collapsing Trap. This is arguably the best trap in Riptide.
Yeah.
So it says, if this defends an attack with Go again, your opponent discards their entire hand and draws back up to the same number of cards, -1. So Anthony has just basically blocked for 3, milled 2 cards out of Blake's deck, and probably messed up his entire game plan for the turn.
Yep. Riptide has a very crushing grip on this game at the moment. Uzuri's out is damage, not fatigue.
And if you talk about her Uzuri's endgame being swinging daggers over and over again, let's say Anthony finally deploys one of those Murky Waters, recycles his Collapsing Trap, and then plays it into one of your daggers, eliminating more cards from your hand.
Yeah, that would be brutal.
It's a hurdle to jump over.
9.
I think about the disease for a second.
Anthony is taking a good amount of damage. Remorseless, though, getting its value, becoming a 7 damage arrow rather than 5.
Yeah, interesting choice there. It seems like Anthony, in the process of fatiguing, may want to get Blake just a little bit lower to force the blocks sooner rather than later. Not liking it when Blake can set up such a large 5-card hand with the potential of reactions. Anthony needs to be very careful with his life and also very careful of being able to strip those cards from Blake so that he can't present such a difficult 5-card hand in the future.
We both get one
Blake was in the tank thinking about which of those Death Touch tokens to give to Anthony, and
He's been doing
chose
this
Blood
for
Rot, which makes a lot of
Or
sense.
10 dominate.
And here it comes, the first Murky Water of the game.
10 dominate.
Also lined up with a Line It Up, which gives it that aim counter, also gives it Dominate, which, hey, talk about inevitability again.
Yeah, all of a sudden Anthony's like, what are you guys talking about? I don't fatigue. I kill.
Exactly.
Doing his best Azalea cosplay here. 10 dominate is nothing to scoff at
No.
when you're sitting at 12 life.
Especially when he has his pick of the litter of which traps to recycle back into
Absolutely.
his use. And it honestly, it has seemed like Blake has sided out defense reactions for this. I mean, we haven't seen a single sink below, not one Fate Foreseen.
Yeah, it could be that he knew that the Dreadbore would just end up clogging those way too much, and it would be better just not to have them rather than have a bunch of cards. Sure, maybe it helps with the fatigue a little bit, but how helpful is it if you can't even play efficient turns?
Right, exactly. But, and you know, Anthony showing like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because here comes a dominated arrow, and you don't have a defense reaction in your arsenal because you left him at home.
Yeah, Blake going down to 7 life while Anthony goes and chooses his favorite 3 defense reactions.
And all of a sudden, the tables are turned, Michael. The life totals are flipped on their heads.
Yeah,
Oh, how the turntables.
absolutely. And Anthony has those 2 win conditions, and both of them are looking in his favor at this point. He could win through life or fatigue. It's his choice.
Okay, so Anthony is resolving the on-hit trigger of Murky Water. He's looking through his discard pile to choose 3 traps. Those traps are going to be banished face down, and then one of them is going to be randomly chosen and placed into Anthony's arsenal. And of course, we find Collapsing Trap. Also paired with 2 tripwire traps. I think Anthony's just thinking like,
EX on myself.
I have to have tripwire traps in arsenal, and I'm going to basically get a free 0 for 4 in the arsenal. Why not?
Yeah, what better use of
Take 2 from Blood
the Murky Waters than forcing the ones that must be played from Arsenal into Arsenal?
And also against assassins, preventing more on-hits is always a happy thing. So we don't know which of those was chosen, but I'm sure Anthony's going to show us in just a moment.
Blake holding a Codex, deciding to pitch that for a dagger. He knows there's a defense react, so using the Nerve Scalpel here.
So we saw that he had 2 silver out. Maybe those silver weren't supposed to be out.
He may have just been grabbing a token, and the silver were underneath his hero,
Understood.
moving them to the side.
I thought he was buying back his shoes posthumously.
Yeah, I don't recall him completing any contracts.
So here comes Nerve Scalpel. Nerf Scalpel connects, ostensibly because Anthony doesn't have any traps, doesn't really care.
Yeah, doesn't want to waste the one in his arsenal against just a dagger.
It'll block
3.
3 because this guy.
Yep, so here's a
pay
3
one
block
or
on the
pay
tripwire
one.
trap. However, Blake has to pay 1 resource if he wants any on-hits to connect on this chain link.
Yeah, and with no cards in hand, that does not seem possible.
Oh, and Anthony's found the other piece of inevitability in this Riptide deck. It's Spike Pit Trap. Because Blake has
Ooh.
activated an attack reaction, Blake is going to mill the top of his card and then lose life equal to every single card with the same name in his graveyard. And if we found our way back to that stack of isolates like we talked about, this could be bad.
He could be taking 4 damage here.
Mm-hmm.
You'll mill the top part of your deck since it's like.
Oh, more than that. If this is an isolate, he's dead.
And then the top,
It's a weakest link.
Okay, and I think that's his 3rd copy, so he will be taking
gonna take one
4
spike
from
hit, so you're
3 from the weakest link and 1 from the Riptide trigger,
Mm-hmm.
assuming there is, in fact.
So 1 damage, and then how many weakest links are in there?
And we're showcasing why Riptide has just
There
a
it is.
little bit less life than any other hero
Right.
because he kind of plays.
7?
He's weird. Riptide plays on all axes,
Right,
right?
he can deal that damage during your turn. It's like
Yeah.
a teeny little Kano poke.
It's a cute little Kano
Yeah,
thing,
nothing,
right?
nothing just to,
It's
nothing
no
crazy.
Aether
but
Wildfire, but hey, this
over
is
the course of a
legitimate
game, I mean,
damage.
look at that. He just went from 7 to 2
I will react with the final. Tripwire.
and another trap.
And now Anthony has resolved 2 tripwire traps. How? Both of those have to come from Arsenal. Well, here's how. He plays 1 from Arsenal, he plays 1 from hand, activates the Riptide passive ability, reloads that other Crucible trap, and then sends it.
And we've got a
Putting
Murky
Blake to
Water
1.
7. Does it not have
It
Dominate?
does not because it doesn't
Okay.
have an aim counter.
I see.
But it's still a breakpoint.
That's a breakpoint, and it's a breakpoint that matters more than any other breakpoint on hit death.
Yep. And that basically says, I am telling you for 3 cards, Blake.
Yeah, Blake has to block 3 here. Comes in with the Pervasive Prognosis. Stealth with a meaningful on-hit, even if he doesn't utilize that Uzuri ability.
Which does ask the question, Anthony, Persuasive Prognosis is such a cool card for that reason. It's like, yeah, you can let this go, but 1 damage is pretty prickly when it's going to steal cards from your hand.
And for the rest of the game, I don't know if Blake is allowed to play anything with Go Again or anything with base power higher than its base, or maybe even any reactions. He's at 1 life.
Yeah.
Any trap triggered kills him.
1 card in hand.
Now there's 3 axes that Anthony can win on. Attacking, fatigue,
Yeah,
and trap damage.
yeah. So,
Riptide really has him exactly where he wants him. Set up all the traps, and all of a sudden you're surrounded. There's nowhere you can go.
and this is the point where that Uzuri ability becomes kind of less meaningful because there's nothing to stop Anthony from throwing 2 cards in front of every single stealth attack and still running Blake out of cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony's deck is looking healthy, and I can't see it how many, but I wonder if how many turns Blake has left. It can't be more than 3.
Mm-hmm. Because
Probably less than that.
we're gonna see 2 card 7s until the end of time at this point.
Yep.
Although we haven't seen the Barraging Braunhide, I think it might have finally got cut.
Okay.
Very devastating
Okay.
because that was, I believe he was calling it Barraging or Brontide or something like that.
Oh,
for a
Brontide.
while.
I like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. So the deck has lost a little bit of its namesake, but obviously still showcasing a really strong performance here.
Anthony thinking long and hard about whether he wants to respect this stealth card or not.
Wow, Anthony says these are my blocks. We have an
Decides
Uzuri activation.
not to respect it.
Amnesia? Sure.
Could have a trap, but does not.
Alas, no.
Taking 3, 4 to 1.
Lucky he is that Amnesia was the swap in there. Not really a card with an on-hit against Riptide. So this is, well, it's not Command and Conquer because it doesn't have a name, but this is
Right.
a
It's
6-power attack that you can't play defense
It's
reactions.
who knows what it is, but it will bottom your arsenal, which, you know what this is? This is a, it's not Barraging Braunhide, but it's the 2-power one.
It's the, I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know those cards.
Well, whatever. It doesn't have a name
It's a
anyway.
2 for 6. It's a vanilla 2 for 6. We're playing draft.
Indeed so.
And here we have Blake, another Isolate, another
Swapping
Uzuri,
in.
and there it is.
And we've activated the Pendulum Trap.
Yeah.
And not only has Anthony taken him down from 1 life to 0, he's also milled the last 2
Yep.
cards out of his deck.
Filled with on the 2 axes,
Literally
2 of the
every
3 axes he could kill on, he does in the same fell swoop.
that went well.
So if you are excited about Riptide, boy, are you rejoicing right now because Anthony Pham, my compatriot on the AGE Pro team, has taken Riptide to 4-0.
Yep, love to see that. Riptide fans, love to see it.
Really, really hoping that Anthony is able to create a top 8 out of this. We see a lot of requests in chat for the spoiler.
I think-
you guys want to see it again?
Is that it?
There it is again.
Look at that. Wow. I wish I could speak spoiler because I don't understand anything except for the beautiful art on this card.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, folks. We actually have a spoiler for you, but it'll be coming up in a bit. In the meantime, I'm just going to make you stare at this beautiful new printing of Dorinth the Iron Song.
Yeah,
once again.
unfortunately, we're going to hold you all hostage if you want to see that spoiler. You're going to have to wait a little bit.
That's right. Tune in, hang out with us. We don't want you going anywhere. But we're going to go somewhere just for a quick moment because Michael hasn't eaten yet.
Oh,
and he really
that's right.
needs
Thanks
to.
for the reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. I want
Lunch break.
I want to make sure you're still filling out that beautiful
Thank you,
Hawaiian
sir.
shirt. Can't let you loosen too many calories.
Right,
you
right,
know?
right.
And yeah, we'll be back in just a moment for more Flesh and Blood after this.